It started out with an idea to make a documentary.
Now, with over 60 interviews completed and more to record, it's time to listen fully.
These are the stories from those who experienced the Young Religious Unitarian Universalist program.
We are the ones, we've been waiting. Let's try that. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Again. We are the ones, we've been waiting. One more time. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Part two goes like this. We are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we've been waiting. One more. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Part three. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Again. We are the ones we've been waiting for. One more. We are the ones we've been waiting for. So I'll invite you to rise in body or spirit, to breathe deep and be present. Breathe out the day and rock out together. You can pick any three of the parts. You can go back and forth between them. Let's take a deep breath. We are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the
Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of the YRUU podcast. I'm Dawn McKechnie.
And I'm Lindsay Cattle LaPointe.
This episode features Matt Meyer. Matt has led worship for hundreds of congregations, traveling the country sharing a message of love and justice through rhythm and song. He is currently the director of community life for Sanctuary Boston.
One of our original ideas in making the documentary was to highlight different organizations that are continuing the ideas from the YRUU program, either through their practices or being led by someone who went through the program. So, although we didn't explicitly highlight Sanctuary Boston, we used images from one of their worships in the film.
Matt truly encompasses the spirit of YRUU, and you will hear that through his words and singing. Enjoy.
My name is Matt Meyer, and I live here in Boston, and I grew up just outside of Chicago. I grew up attending a Lutheran school in grade school, but also went to UU Church on Sundays. And my parents were very involved in the church. And particularly when I was heading into junior high, I went to a UU camp for the first time when I was about 12 years old. And even though I had grown up going to church on Sundays, it was kind of a routine and it was by rote, but having that first camp experience was the first place where I really had what I still think of as a conversion experience into Unitarian Universalism. That was the first place where I really experienced what I would call beloved community and unconditional love, and where the kind of rules of how things work were just so different than I had seen in school or in other places, where love was the kind of founding principle for how we interacted with each other as peers. And that was really the beginning of my getting involved then as a youth in YRUU and in other kinds of faith communities, kind of looking to recreate and also foster that experience for others. That first year of junior high when I was 12 was also the year that I began taking drum lessons, wanting to play rock music on the drum set. And over the years, my teacher, who was really interested in other world music traditions and instruments from around the world, really encouraged me and his other students to branch out, to try drums and percussion and music from Cuba and Brazil and the Middle East and other places. So I got really interested in, for a long time, particularly in high school, I had these kind of two parallel paths that the two places where I found grounding and connection was in my religious life as a Unitarian Universalist, going to youth group on Wednesday evenings and church on Sundays and conferences in the weekends and camps in the summer. And then at the same time getting more and more involved in music and playing in a band and playing with friends and kind of studying and going deeper into music. And I read a book by Mickey Hart, who was the drummer for the Grateful Dead when I was in high school, and he kind of talked about his own branching out from the drum set and rock music and folk music to this wider traditions around the world, to exploring the role of music in communities and in religion and spiritual places around the world. And that was really the first thing that led me to think there might be a connection between my life as a Unitarian Universalist and my life as a drummer and musician. And I think, as a youth, occasionally I would also play drums in worship services, either when my youth group led our annual service on Sunday at my home church, or occasionally at youth conferences I would, do some music for a service, and really loved that. And so towards the end of high school, I went off to music school to get a degree in hand drumming, of all things. And I always kind of thought, once I graduate and I'm hoping to play with bands and play in all the venues, weddings or nightclubs or festivals or whatever else, I always thought playing for services on Sundays might be some piece of that puzzle and how I piece together a living. But after college, I sent a note to a bunch of churches in the Boston area telling them that I led services, and some of them believed me and hired me for that. And that has mostly been how I've supported myself ever since. And part of that is trying to bring some of the spirit of youth worship into Sunday mornings, where it felt so different. Part of my experience, particularly as a youth, was going away to conferences, going away to camps and other gatherings where worship was just really the highlight of that time together. Particularly the singing we would do, and how we would sing a song just over and over in this, what I would call traditional way of communities just kind of going deep into the music together, everybody singing, really participatory. And I remember going back to my own home church on Sundays and feeling like, well, this isn't Unitarian Universalism. Like, this is a totally different thing. It feels different, the structure is different. And so I've been curious ever since then of how to bring some of that emotional centeredness, that embodied feeling into worship on Sunday mornings, and particularly how I think music is one of the best ways we can do that. One thing that has stuck with me over the years is, as a youth, I remember folks saying, our youth in Unitarian Universalism are not the future of our denomination, they're the present of it. And I think part of the gift that I so appreciated was being in a community that respected me as a full participant. And so, in my home church, our youth group was really a part of the church in a meaningful way and integrated into the life of the church. And I felt that as an individual within that youth group. And we would do annual services on Sundays, and also occasionally I'd play drums or music for other services throughout the year. Not often, but enough that I thought like, oh, this is something I can do. And that was true a little bit then in college, and it was certainly true, in college. As I was preparing to graduate, I got in touch with a couple of the churches in the area, and some very generous, ministers invited me to speak a little bit at the services and do some of the music. And most of that, particularly when I was younger, was drumming, which was what my training and education was. As I got more into this, I did more song leading. I've never been a great singer, but I wanted us to be singing in community together the way that had been so meaningful for me as a youth. And so even though I wasn't great at it, I just started asking congregations to sing and teaching them, the few songs that I knew from youth worship. And so I think that youth community and was the place that first led me to think like, oh, I can do this. Like I've seen other young people stand up in front of a group and teach them a song and then get us to sing out and sing with all of our hearts full. And to see that leadership in other people in my community was really important for me, for worship leading and in other aspects of my life. And I think that was part of what how I was able to reach out to churches in the area and say, this is something I think I could offer that would be meaningful to your community and meaningful for me. A lot of my best memories of youth programs were spiraling into a giant sanctuary at a conference, 100 or 200 of us holding hands and circling in and just singing and singing and singing together, and sitting on the floor and participating in worship that was then more music and also very physical and very emotional and connecting. And I think part of what that really taught me was to see up close like how culture is made. I remember from like my very earliest conferences and camps thinking like, well, I can see that the older kids teach the younger kids how to do this. That like when you make fun of somebody, you don't get positive feedback for that. But when you're loving to somebody, when you offer them a compliment, when you offer them a kindness, you get positive feedback. Like I can see how we pass that down. But I remember even like early on saying, but how does that start? How do you create that from scratch? And I think being in YRUU was just like a master class in that. How do you create a community where love is the default, where kindness is the default, where singing is the default? And that's a thing I'm still figuring out for Sundays. In particular, it was so incredible to be in a place where we just say, all right, I'm going to teach you the song and we're all going to sing it. We're going to sing it for a really long time, and it's going to get awkward and then it's going to get beautiful again, and by minute 10 everybody will be crying. But it was just like an expectation, like this is how we're going to do this. We're going to do something really vulnerable and really connecting, and we're all going to do it together, and it's going to be great. And I think I'm still figuring that out on Sundays. Like, how can we bring, how can we change what is normal? How can we not make it a silly once in a while thing to clap along with music or to sing out or to try singing in harmonies or to sing a song a bunch of times in a row, but how can participatory music become the norm? How can it be the default of a culture? And what does it look like to shift culture? How do we ask each other to like take that little risky step or to try singing even if we're shy about it? And I think in particular that's something Sanctuary Boston has done really well too. I went to Camp Marwood in Illinois, which is a very small camp, 1 week a year, and it was each person could go for 4 years, and I went from when I was 12 to 15, more or less, and that would have been from 1994 to 96 or 97. And YRUU overlapped with that. I started going to youth conferences. In my district, you could start at the end of 8th grade. You could go to your first high school conference to see what it was like. So that was, I was in high school 96 to 2000 that I was at youth conferences. The last 2 years of that, I was on the Youth Adult Committee, which was the steering committee for planning the conferences, and the second of those 2 years, my senior year, I was the president of that committee. And those meetings of like planning the conferences were certainly like a part of my experience and a meaningful part. They were, youth just, at least we did the meetings very differently. The first one I went to, our meeting started at like 10 at night and just went till 6 in the morning, and then we were done. And that was it, like 8 hours through the night. But it was also a chance, it was like the first place where, that I was in conversations that felt like they weren't theoretical. Like the rest of school was like preparing you for something in the future. even music was like studying it for like later. But this was like creating a thing now together in a way that felt practical and tangible, in a way that like was also imbued with trust that I don't think we offer to youth in general very often. That so much of that time is like getting ready to do something meaningful when you're older. And that had this very tangible feeling of doing something meaningful now at that time. At the very end of high school, I also, like at the very end, I started going to national conferences as well. So I went to, I think, 2 cons, and that would have been around 99 or 2000 or 2001 maybe, somewhere in there. And then went to a couple of Opus and concentric gatherings, the young adult national conferences in college, and maybe right after college as well. One memory of being in leadership for my district in Illinois was that as president of the committee, I was supposed to go to the board meeting of the district, of the adults meeting. And I think my predecessors hadn't been able to do that for a couple of years, but I remember just this feeling of like sitting at the big kids table at like the board meeting for the whole district, which now doesn't strike me as like, you know, the most weighty of gathering of elders, but at the time just felt like, oh, these are like the biggest decision makers in the world right here, running the business of, you know, the Central Midwest District. And it's, you know, I smile now to like think of how important I felt as a 16 or 17-year-old sitting at this table at a meeting, the kind of meeting that now I would be more than happy to avoid, talking about budgets or whatever. But I do think it was part of that, like, that feeling that was so rare for youth of like, you're at the table as a fellow decision maker, and that has certainly stuck with me. I think a memory of worship that has stuck with me, you know, I shared the kind of like the circling in that we did. I remember at a national youth conferences drumming for a service while everybody else danced, and just getting to like see. I mean, so many of this are memories of like creating that culture that we wanted. Like, how do we create something that is joyful and intimate and celebratory in worship? And getting to see that, you know, music could do that so powerfully was something that really shaped me. I might describe youth worship with a sentence very similar to how I would describe Sanctuary Boston worship these days, or how we speak about it, which is heart-centered, vibrant worship with real connection. I would describe youth worship as very emotional, very connecting, and at its best, often a feeling of transcendence.
We will return after this message. I've learned so much through making our documentary, and now launching this podcast. I'm amazed by the dedication, time, and resources it takes to bring these powerful stories to life. We couldn't do it without you. If you'd like to help us keep sharing them with the world, please visit YRUU.org/donate. So again, it's YRUU.org/donate. Every contribution, big or small, truly makes a difference. Thank you for being part of this journey.
Certainly, looking back, I have more context now of the music we did there, and a lot of it is more neo-pagan than is my favorite music today. There was one, I think Come Come Whoever You Are was really powerful and that we would do a lot. There was one that we would sing The river is a-flowing, flowing and growing. The river is a-flowing down to the sea. Mother, carry me, child I will always be. Mother, carry me down to the sea. That was certainly one that has stuck with me over the years. And also one of my favorites for almost 20 years doing in Sunday morning services now, but that I learned as a youth, was the tugboat and the barge, where we'd have sing a low part and a high part, and two people or two groups of people would walk towards each other and sing the song louder and louder. And that kind of had built into it this structure of an arc of singing, of community singing, that is particularly beautiful and connecting, I think. Sanctuary Boston is a community of vibrant worship and real connection. We meet for worship on Wednesday evenings, twice a month. And the community was founded partially in the hopes of creating a worship experience that was grounded in Unitarian Universalism, but felt different than most of our congregations feel on Sundays. That was not part of the white Protestant liturgy that we've inherited as Unitarian Universalists from our theological ancestors. The founder of Sanctuary, Dave, had been really moved by the kind of emotional experience of attending evangelical worship, but didn't love the theology, and really loved and connected in a deep way with the theology of Unitarian Universalism, but found that he wasn't getting that emotional experience on Sundays at most congregations he visited. And so he gathered a group of us, a planning team together that I was a part of. And I think everyone on that team had felt that kind of worship somewhere. For some of us, that was as youth, and to really know what it was like to just be totally immersed in worship, in your body, really connected to the people around you, something more physical, something more emotional, something that made you laugh and made you cry and just kind of broke your heart open. And I think other folks had experienced that in other traditions or in other places. And so all of us were hoping to kind of create a worship experience that had that feeling in some way. And we talked early on about what that would include. And one of the first things we said was that it was going to be music-centered. And we have this saying at Sanctuary, which is, let's begin with some music, and then we're going to do some singing in the middle, and then we're going to end with some singing as well. And that music is really just kind of woven throughout the service. We begin with 15 minutes at least of singing together. And all the music from beginning to end almost every time is all participatory as well, that people are invited to join in the singing in whatever way works for them. And so for me, that was just, YRUU has been woven through my life in that it showed me that there was like a different way of being in the world. There was a way there are places where people are in community deeply, where people, fall in love with their community and are moved by it, and where people, connect at a deeper level and are more honest and open and authentic and find their true selves in community because of that unconditional love. And I think a lot of my work as a musician and worship leader, and certainly as an activist, even politically, has been to open up some space for that and to shift some culture towards that. And Sanctuary Boston was really founded in that hope to kind of create some experiment to try and create something like that, to open up some space where we could worship together in the Unitarian Universalist tradition, but in a way that wasn't just focused on thinking, but really focused on feeling and experience. Not just to speak about unconditional love, but to experience unconditional love. I often think of the music that I do, and in some ways the worship and community I do, as being reflected through this quote by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel that I really like. He says something like, an aesthetic experience leaves behind the memory of a perception, but a prophetic experience leaves behind the memory of a commitment. And I love that because I can think of concerts I've gone to or art galleries I've gone to where I left with a memory of a perception thinking like, oh, that was really beautiful, that was really pretty, or that meal tasted great. And then there are experiences I've had where I've left with the memory of a commitment, where I was so moved by the music, I was so moved by the worship service that I've left thinking, I have to live my life differently now. I've got to do something different. And part of that is a recognition at how different the world can be. To experience unconditional love, in the way that I experienced in some places in YRUU, and that I think we try and create in some ways in Sanctuary Boston, I think can't help but leave us wondering, like, well, first of all, how can I take this and offer this to somebody else who needs it? And how can we create a world that looks a little bit more like this? This shouldn't be the exception, this should be the rule. And I think, for me that shows up in a lot of places. I think, our prison system and economic inequality and, the need for reproductive justice that we have, all of those injustices keep us from being able to be in community this way, keep us from being able to be our best selves with each other. All of those oppressions, are so damaging to the spirit. And so I think we need to come at it from both directions to foster alternative communities while also dismantling the systems of inequality that are around us, so that we can hopefully meet in the middle somewhere and create space for that kind of love as we have felt it in those prophetic moments of worship.
Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. I wanted to jump in here to tell you that we are having a con-inspired connective retreat November 20th to the 22nd on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. This is co-directed by myself and Reverend Jason Leiden, with our weekend musician Matt Meyer. Many of the people you will hear on this podcast plan to be in attendance and even help lead some of the activities. Our registration is now open with a special early bird price. When you head to our website, yruu.org, click on Connective Retreat. It's time to connect. See you there.
Yeah, I remember so clearly as I was bridging out of YRUU, I remember so clearly just feeling like, well, these people are just going to change the world. Like, these are the most brilliant, loving, passionate people ever. And here we all gathered together at this conference or in these youth groups and spread out all over the country. And I remember just being so excited to see what everyone was going to do with their lives. And out of the dozens or hundreds of people I met through YRUU, I'm certainly not in touch with most of them, but it's certainly been inspiring to see Jason Leiden over the years create Black and Pink, this prison abolition community and organizing effort for LGBTQ folks who are incarcerated. And just to see that spirit of liberation manifested and extended out into communities that need it. Also, one of my closest friends in the world is Will Tansman, who was on that same youth adult committee, steering committee with me in Illinois. And we met each other at one of our very first youth conferences, and he's been a community organizer in Chicago for a lot of years now. And his organization just won this huge victory eliminating cash bail in Illinois. They were one of the leaders of a major coalition that came together for that work, and have just done incredible election work. They've really helped to reshape the city council in Chicago. And it's just been a beautiful thing for 2 decades now since we were in YRUU together to watch him put those values into action. And I see that certainly in a lot of other places. And Sanctuary Boston is one place where that shows up. Part of one piece of my hope for Sanctuary Boston is to be a bridge for folks who are bridging out of youth programs and from anywhere in the country and ending up in Boston or joining us online, and that we can continue to be a place that continues to offer Unitarian Universalist community to those folks. And so I hope that in the future that'll continue to be a place where folks can live out the values that they grew up with in their congregations. So part of my worship leading on Sunday mornings has also been creating stories to share with congregations for a time for all ages. And in particular, many years ago, I was doing a service on how you can't be neutral in times of injustice, and was going to share this quote from Desmond Tutu. And on the way to church, as I remember it, I kind of spun that quote out into a larger story that eventually became a story I shared more often and then published as a book with Skinner House Press last year. And it's really just been a joy to share that with folks. It was never a plan of mine to be an author of any kind. That's still not even a title I would claim necessarily. But I like to do a little bit of a lot of different things in general, and just about everything that I work on, hobbies and paid work or unpaid work or volunteering or whatever, is always kind of rooted, I think, in what I learned as a youth about what it looks like to shift culture, what it looks like to create and foster different kinds of communities that live differently from the model we've seen. And it's been a joy to share this story about how we can't be neutral in situations of injustice, as Desmond Tutu said, and to just have that as one more way to help people imagine how different things might be if we decided to change them. I think Unitarian Universalists struggle to articulate what defines us, and despite working on it and some practice, that is still true for me as well. One way that I explain Sanctuary Boston to folks who aren't familiar with Unitarian Universalism is that some folks define themselves as spiritual but not religious, and for me, religion, sometimes that means spiritual but without community. But to be our best selves, to find our deepest truth, isn't something that is best done in isolation. That we are communal creatures, that even folks who are the most individualist in their spiritual lives probably have hobbies that they have learned from other people in community. Very few people try and learn how to be a musician without listening to music. Nobody tries to figure out how to be a painter without looking at other paintings. And I think it's a unique thing that people say, well, I'm going to try and be a spiritually mature person, and I'm going to figure out totally on my own. That's the one area of my life that I don't need to learn from anyone else. I don't need to be in community. I don't need to be challenged or comforted by anybody else. I can do it on my own. And at Sanctuary Boston, I think rather than having one belief that we're trying to push on people, it's a community where we're trying to teach each other and learn together what it means to live a meaningful life. That in community and by sharing our stories and sharing our experiences and supporting each other, we can figure out better together how to live our best lives and how to live a life that aligns with our highest values. Yeah, looking back at YRUU now as an adult, there are certainly some things that I would do differently if I was a young person again, or if I someday had kids that went to the conferences that I had once gone to. I would want to talk with the responsible adults about how we might do some things differently. And there are traditions from my camp, and there are appropriated songs from the conferences that make me cringe when I think of them. And that's also true in some ways of Unitarian Universalism in general in the 90s, that we are still a young religion, and we are learning quickly in some ways and learning very painfully slowly at other times about how to be in community together and how to be a truly inclusive space and a justice-centered space. And so yeah, the list of things that I would do differently if I was on that youth adult committee this year is not a short one. And I think I think for those that are still doing conferences, I imagine they have changed a lot since then for that reason, just as our congregations, thank God, have changed a lot in the last 20-something years about the kind of music they do and what music is inclusive and what music is truly justice-centered and speaks to our values. And I hope our denomination will be a lot different 20 years from now than it is from today, just as much as we've come a long way since then. And I think that's true for our youth as well. I'll add that it also breaks my heart that there are such fewer spaces for youth to gather in the way that we did. Someone once shared with me that they thought every religion has an orthodox wing and a mystical wing. And in Unitarian Universalism, our mystical wing was the youth movement, and the Orthodox wing cut off that branch of Unitarian Universalism, so now we are only Orthodox. And that is not the whole truth of the story of YRUU, but for me it is certainly some piece of it. And I think while we continue to create worship in some places that touches on transcendence, I hope, and I still think the places where that happened most consistently for the most people don't exist anymore. And I hope as Unitarian Universalism matures, I hope we will be able to find places that are, to foster communities that are more mystical in that way, that are more transcendent, where people become overwhelmingly immersed in love and joy in a worship experience or in the music that they're a part of, and to find ways to do that better than we did it as youth in the 90s, but still find ways to create that. I think that's the heart center of a lot of the world's great religious traditions, and it's not always strong or present in Unitarian Universalism as we see it now.
This podcast was produced by Linden Tree Productions. The interview was conducted by Dawn McKechnie. Music featured by Scott Murphy and Matt Meyer.
For more information, go to yruu.org. That's the question all spelled out. yruu.org.
Don't forget our documentary, YRUU, is available to watch now by renting or buying it through Vimeo.
Please subscribe and review this podcast. It will really help more folks find this content. Thank you.
Beloveds, may you go forth in love, sharing your story with others, listening deeply to those in your life, and creating sanctuary wherever you go. May your days be filled with blessed unrest and your nights with dreams of justice. Go in love, go in peace, and go as you are a blessing to others.